Welcome back to the channel. These stories are meant for late nights, quiet rooms, and headphones on. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment telling me where you're listening from tonight. Now, let's begin the first story. No one stops for the child. Not really. Drivers see a small figure on the overpass at night, pale and still, and instinct whispers danger, yet curiosity lingers. Those who slow down find the figure gone before they can even decide what to do, and some never see the road the same way again. It began with a commuter, a man driving home after another long day in the city. Rain slicked the highway, headlights cutting ribbons through the mist. Up ahead, a shape appeared on the overpass, small, motionless, framed by the dim streetlights. A child, a boy no older than 7, hands gripping the guardrail. He waved, just once. The man slowed, unsure. The windshield wipers flapped in frantic rhythm, the child's image flickering through the rain. He felt a pull he couldn't explain, a tug of concern and unease. And then he realized the overpass was empty. No boy, no guardrail disturbance, only wet concrete glistening under the lights. By morning, he couldn't shake the memory. Something about the figure had felt deliberate, intentional, almost expectant. Others saw it too. At first, it was a handful of reports. Commuters, truck drivers, late-night cabbies, each claiming the same encounter. A child standing silently on the overpass, pale in the lamplight, waving, staring, then vanishing before contact. Authorities dismissed it as fatigue, hallucination, or trick of the streetlights. But then patterns emerged. The sightings clustered along the same stretch of highway. Each witness reported subtle anomalies. The child's clothes seemed slightly wet, though it hadn't rained in that section. His eyes were always dark, reflecting the headlights in a way that felt off. One woman described seeing footprints appear briefly on the guardrail, as if someone had been perched on it for hours, then vanish without trace. The local police kept their reports internal, quietly, avoiding press release. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to call it. But there was fear in the officers who patrolled that stretch at night, a soft, creeping dread that couldn't be explained. One officer, new to the precinct, swore he saw the child on his first night. He stopped to check, radio in hand, and the figure disappeared the moment he blinked. His partner refused to believe him, but when they drove back later, the asphalt where the boy had stood was darker than wet concrete should have been, a subtle depression in the surface that faded as the hours passed. No one who saw the child could recall why he had been there, only the feeling of being watched, measured, and somehow judged. By the end of the week, the commuter from the first report had returned to the scene, compelled by something he couldn't name. He parked beneath the overpass, staring up at the darkened silhouette. Rain pattered over his windshield, and for a long, heavy moment, he waited. The child appeared. No wave this time, no motion, just the small figure standing against the guardrail, head slightly tilted, eyes fixed on him. The man felt a chill, a weight pressing down, as if the air itself had thickened. The child didn't speak, he didn't move, yet the world seemed quieter, as though the highway had bent to accommodate his presence. Then he raised one small hand, not a wave, just a gesture. Come closer. And that's when the man realized something terrible. The child wasn't there to ask for help. He was waiting. After the first commuter's encounter, word of the overpass began circulating quietly. Not through news outlets, nothing official, but in hushed conversations among truckers at rest stops, night shift workers at diners, and city employees leaving late from offices along the highway. Each story was carefully phrased. A child on the guardrail, motionless, sometimes waving, sometimes just staring. Always gone before anyone could reach him. The highway had always been lonely at night, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through suburbs, industrial lots, and stretches of unmapped grassland. Streetlights flickered in patches, and in the gaps, darkness seemed to pool unnaturally, hiding shapes that should not exist. Locals learned quickly the overpass was something you glanced at, not something you studied. The next sighting came from a delivery driver. He reported the child standing on the edge, holding a small, tattered doll. Rain had fallen earlier, leaving puddles that reflected the dim streetlights. The doll, he said, looked soaked, its head tilted oddly as though it had been trying to watch him too. The driver slowed instinctively, heart pounding, and the figure simply vanished as he approached. Only a faint wet patch remained on the asphalt, just wide enough to suggest the child had been perched there, impossibly steady, for hours. By then, authorities began to notice patterns. The child never appeared in the same place twice. The sightings clustered along a mile-long stretch, but the exact positions shifted, like the figure was moving along the overpass in some deliberate rhythm. Police vehicles began patrolling at night more regularly, but cameras failed to capture anything. Body-worn cams recorded static when pointed directly at the child. Dash cams often caught only faint blurs, unidentifiable shapes that dissolved when reviewed. Then came the first disappearance. A young couple driving home late at night reported seeing the child on the overpass. He waved at them, arms outstretched. Something about the gesture felt urgent. They pulled over, heart hammering. As the man climbed the overpass steps, the child vanished. The woman stayed in the car, unsure if she had seen anything at all. When she finally stepped out to call 911, her boyfriend was gone. No trace, no tire marks suggesting a fall, no indication he had left on his own. Only the damp, glinting asphalt where he had paused. Investigators were baffled. No camera footage, no witnesses, just a single, solitary wet patch on the road. They considered the possibility of foul play, abduction, assault, misadventure, but the local landscape offered no hiding places, no escape routes, no clues at all. It was as if the asphalt itself had swallowed him. The story spread quietly, though official reports remained scarce. Rumors intensified. People began to talk of the child in whispers. Not a ghost, not a spirit, but something that existed somewhere between intent and presence. Witnesses began to describe the sensation of being measured, as though the child's gaze penetrated past skin and bone, into decisions and hesitation, into choices. Those who lingered too long spoke of subtle changes in the air, a weight pressing downward, the smell of wet earth even when the highway was dry, the faint sense of footsteps behind them that disappeared when they turned around. Drivers who had passed the overpass multiple times reported noticing the child standing there in the same spot. Though no time had passed, no movement should have been possible. One night, a lone officer patrolling the stretch saw the child crouched near the guardrail. Unlike previous sightings, he could see the face clearly, pale, expressionless, and impossibly still. He stopped the cruiser, radio in hand, but the child didn't wave or move. It only stared. The officer felt the weight in his chest grow heavier with each second, as though the child's gaze had drawn gravity toward him. Every instinct screamed to leave, to drive away immediately, but the officer could not move. Then the child raised a hand, not a wave, not a beckoning gesture, but a slow, deliberate point toward the center of the highway. The officer's stomach churned. Something was wrong, something unexplainable. He obeyed instinct anyway, inching backward along the shoulder, and when he looked again, the child was gone. No movement, no trace, only the empty guardrail and a faint shimmer of moisture on the asphalt. That night, the officer didn't sleep. The next morning, commuters reported seeing the child again, in a slightly different position, closer to the far side of the overpass. Rumors of disappearances circulated more openly. People shared stories online under the veil of anonymity. A man vanished at a diner parking lot nearby. A teenager's backpack found abandoned under the overpass. a woman's journal left on a guardrail as if someone had paused to write and then disappeared. None were linked to crime, none were explained. The highway authorities tried to install cameras along the overpass. Every system failed in the same way. Cameras would flicker with static the moment the child appeared. Video footage, once downloaded, would corrupt, frames missing, sections skipping, or the child replaced with faint, unidentifiable shapes that dissolved when reviewed. No one could study him, record him, or understand him. Local folklore began to form, whispered in diners and gas stations along the stretch. Some said the child was a ghost of a boy killed years ago in a traffic accident, one whose body was never found. Others claimed it was a warning, a sentinel set there to remind travelers to slow down, to respect life. No one knew for certain, and no one dared approach closely enough to find out. The ranger who had been monitoring the overpass after the first sightings began to piece together the patterns. The child appeared only when cars slowed, only when hesitation replaced certainty, only when someone's curiosity outweighed caution. He wasn't there to harm, he was there to measure, to observe, to ensure that the living understood the cost of distraction, negligence, and recklessness. By the end of the second week, a pattern emerged. Those who lingered longest, who tried to approach, who refused to turn away, were most likely to disappear. Those who obeyed instinct, slowed only briefly, and kept moving past the overpass survived. No one knew why. The ranger suspected, correctly, that the child's presence was tied not to mischief or malice, but to consequence. By now, the overpass had earned its quiet reputation. Drivers avoided it at night. Families detoured miles to bypass it. Truckers whispered warnings to newcomers, and everyone carried a story, a feeling, a sense of unease that would not leave them for weeks. Even in daylight, the shadow of the child seemed to linger on the pavement, a memory of expectation, judgment, and absence. And yet, the sightings continued. The child never aged, never faltered, never blinked, and every night, for those who noticed, he waited. By the third week, the highway authorities were aware that this stretch of overpass was no ordinary site of minor urban legend. Complaints of missing pedestrians, unexplained vehicle anomalies, and sightings that defied rational explanation forced them to review internal reports. Still, they dismissed most cases as driver error, mental fatigue, or coincidence. That is, until the third disappearance. A delivery driver, experienced and cautious, was making his usual overnight rounds. At approximately 2:17 a.m., he noticed the figure, the child, standing motionless at the edge of the guardrail. He slowed the truck instinctively, headlights cut through the night reflecting in something impossibly dark in the child's eyes. The driver stopped completely. The engine ticked as if struggling to start. Rain had begun to fall lightly, dotting the asphalt. The child's pale hand rose slowly, palm out, pointing toward the center of the highway. A chill ran down the driver's spine, a pressure in his chest, like the weight of the night itself pressing on him. Despite every instinct screaming to move, he stepped out of the vehicle, just a few steps. The child remained still, unblinking, his gaze fixed. The wind shifted unnaturally, carrying a damp, earthy smell. The asphalt beneath his boots felt heavy, almost alive. Each step toward the figure made him aware of an invisible resistance, subtle yet undeniable, like walking through thick water. And then the child vanished. No movement, no noise, just empty guardrail and darkened wet pavement. The driver froze, fear rooting him to the spot. By the time he returned to his truck, shivering, the engine would not turn over. His cell phone had no signal. Static hissed from the radio. Hours passed, or perhaps minutes, before he finally abandoned the vehicle and ran toward the nearest exit. He never reported what happened in detail, only that he had lost track of time. When investigators checked his route, the GPS data showed a blank gap of nearly 2 hours. The truck was later found parked neatly at the side of the road with no signs of struggle, no damage, and no trace of the driver. The overpass had claimed another witness. From that point on, the child's appearances became more deliberate. He no longer merely waved or stood. Drivers began noticing subtle cues, the tilt of his head, a hand extended to indicate direction, his eyes reflecting not light, but expectation. Those who ignored the instinct to stop, to hesitate, survived. Those who obeyed curiosity, even briefly, disappeared, leaving behind only the faint wetness of the asphalt, a patch that would vanish by dawn as if erased by the night itself. The ranger, who had been documenting the sightings privately, began correlating the incidents. He noticed that those who disappeared tended to be distracted, indecisive, or overly curious. A pattern emerged, one that was not visible in the daylight, but clear in the small, desperate moments when a driver paused, slowed, or stopped entirely. The child was a measure, not of morality, not of guilt, but of hesitation, of human error, of attention misaligned with circumstance. Those who lingered too long, whose minds wavered between instinct and curiosity, were marked. Locals began to understand this without naming it. They diverted from the overpass at night. Families took longer routes home. Truckers whispered warnings to those who were new to the route. And still, the highway authorities installed cameras, lights, and patrols, unaware that technology had no power here. Cameras malfunctioned, motion sensors failed, lights flickered. Nothing captured the child's presence with clarity. No photo, no recording, no measurement could stand against the phenomena. It was as if the overpass had become a threshold. Crossing it without heed invited consequence. The ranger returned one night, determined to observe without approaching. He parked at a distance and watched. The child appeared, a small figure in the lamplight, hands folded loosely, head slightly tilted. No wave, no gesture, yet the child's presence seemed to ripple outward. Wind shifted, rain pooled unnaturally. Even the guardrail, metal, cold, immovable, seemed to bend subtly, accommodating the figure without breaking. The ranger realized with a growing sense of horror that the child's existence was not bound by biology or time. He remained unchanged across sightings, as if the overpass itself fed and preserved the figure. Then the impossible occurred. Another vehicle approached, a teenager driving home from a friend's house. Headlights illuminated the child. The driver slowed instinctively. The child raised one hand, palm outward, pointing to the center of the highway. The teen hesitated, fumbling with the steering wheel. The ranger held his breath. The car lurched forward. The child disappeared. Nothing happened. No crash, no vanishing, nothing. But the ranger noticed a subtle detail. The pavement where the child had stood was darker, damp as if wet, yet no rain had fallen there. The overpass itself had remembered the presence. The boy had never truly left. The ranger understood this was not a haunt in the conventional sense. It was a test of instinct and awareness, a slow, merciless measurement of human attention and decision-making under risk. The overpass had become a guardian of consequence, and the child was the embodiment of its judgment. He also realized that the child's patience was infinite. No one had ever reported seeing the child tired, distracted, or aging. The overpass preserved the figure as it had preserved itself, steady, silent, unyielding. By the fourth week, the highway had developed a reputation among commuters. Rumors circulated in online forums under the veil of anonymity. Some said the child was the spirit of a boy killed in a traffic accident decades ago, whose body was never found. Others whispered he was a warning, a sentinel, a measure of human negligence. No one could approach closely enough to know. No one could stop to question him without consequence. The ranger knew the truth. The child was neither spirit nor ghost, neither angel nor demon. He was an echo of consequence made flesh, a sentinel created by countless decisions, missteps, and tragedies across the overpass's history. Those who lingered paid a price. Those who respected instinct passed unscathed. The overpass waited, the child waited, and the night grew heavier, filled with quiet judgment for anyone unwise enough to linger. By the fourth week, the overpass had become more than a location. It had become a memory itself. The asphalt, guardrails, and lamplights were no longer passive infrastructure. They absorbed every sighting, every hesitation, every moment of human curiosity or error. The child's presence was now almost a constant, though fleeting to any one observer. The ranger returned once more, determined to understand. He arrived late at night, parking well below the overpass. Mist rolled in from the surrounding industrial lots, curling along the highway in thin gray tendrils. Rain had passed hours earlier, leaving the concrete glistening under the streetlights. He watched, waiting. Minutes passed. Nothing happened. Then, as if the night itself had shifted, the child appeared, not at the edge, not waving, just standing quietly near the guardrail, eyes fixed on the ranger's distant position. The figure was small, pale, unremarkable at first glance, but the air around him felt thicker. Sound was muted, as though the overpass itself had drawn a curtain around the scene. The ranger felt it immediately, a sense of inevitability, a pressure on the chest that could not be shaken. The child's gaze was patient, but patient in a way that measured everything: attention, fear, hesitation, intent. And then the first vehicle appeared. A sedan, headlights cutting through the mist. The driver slowed instinctively, squinting against the lamplight reflection. The child raised a hand, pointing, not at the driver, not at the ranger, but at the center of the highway itself. The car paused, and for a heartbeat, the air seemed to tremble. The child vanished. The headlights revealed only empty road, but the driver was gone. The ranger froze. He had seen the pattern repeated, but never this close, never while observing in person. He realized fully the overpass did not merely judge. It acted when hesitation was offered, when distraction, curiosity, or indecision tipped the balance. More vehicles appeared that night, moving slowly, carefully, each responding instinctively different ways. Some slowed too long, some hesitated mid-lane, and in every instance the child appeared to the driver's sight just long enough to measure. Those who lingered vanished, leaving behind only traces of wet asphalt, faint depressions, subtle shadows that dissolved before any camera could record them. The ranger understood something new. The overpass was not alone, not in the sense of having company, but in being the tip of a phenomenon embedded in the highway itself. The overpass carried memory of every accident, every lapse, every human misstep across decades, and the child was the embodiment of its judgment, small, silent, persistent. At some point, a truck approached. The driver, alert, glanced up and saw the child standing near the guardrail. He slowed, but not fully, moving cautiously through the area. The child remained still, staring, waiting, measuring, and the asphalt itself seemed to bend under weight, guiding the truck past danger. No disappearance occurred. The ranger realized the child did not act maliciously. The child enforced consequence. He measured, and when reckoning was not required, he allowed passage. Hours passed. The mist thickened. The ranger did not move, only watched. The child's gaze seemed to shift toward him briefly, as though aware of his observation. And for the first time, the ranger felt the weight of understanding. The overpass did not punish curiosity. It punished indecision, distraction, and thoughtless hesitation. By morning, the overpass was empty again. Vehicles passed with no hint of the night's events. The asphalt glistened dry and smooth as if the mist and rain had cleansed every mark. The child had disappeared, but his presence lingered. A memory embedded in concrete and steel, in shadows and light, in the air that drivers passed through unknowingly. The local authorities quietly removed all lights and cameras from the stretch. Patrols were limited. The highway remained open, but commuters avoided it instinctively. The stories spread in whispers. a child on the overpass, pale and small, who measured the living and reclaimed those who lingered too long. No one dared linger, and no one questioned the disappearance of those who did. The ranger left that night with the knowledge that the overpass was alive in memory, and that the child, or something he represented, would always be waiting, watching, patient. And some part of him understood, finally, that the highway did not need witnesses. It only needed respect. Weeks passed, yet the overpass remained a silent sentinel. The streetlights flickered as they always had. Rain fell in uneven patterns, and the asphalt gleamed in the moonlight. To the casual driver, it was just another stretch of road, empty, quiet, unremarkable. But those who had seen him knew differently. The ranger returned one final time. He did not park directly under the overpass. He did not approach. He merely stood on a nearby overpass, far enough to see the stretch of highway, and waited. Hours passed. Cars moved like slow ghosts in the distance. Occasionally, a driver slowed, a brief hesitation that might have been instinct, might have been fear. And then, as if drawn by recognition, the child appeared. Not waving, not calling, not moving, just standing near the guardrail, small, pale, eyes fixed on the ranger's distant figure. The night seemed heavier here, dense in a way that made each breath deliberate. Even the wind slowed. The ranger felt it immediately. The child's presence was no longer simply judgment. It was expectation, awareness, memory. Every past misstep, every hesitation, every life lost to distraction or indecision seemed to echo through him. The child embodied all of it. Centuries of vigilance distilled into a small, unyielding figure on the overpass. A car approached from the east, headlights reflected in the child's eyes. The driver slowed instinctively. The figure raised a hand, palm outward, pointing toward the center of the lane. The driver hesitated for barely a moment, a heartbeat, and then moved on. The asphalt beneath the child's feet glistened damply, though no rain fell, as if recording the moment for the memory of the highway itself. The ranger realized the truth fully, finally. This was not a haunting in the conventional sense. The child was not a ghost, not a spirit, not even a warning in the typical human understanding. He was a measure of consequence, a living echo of everything the overpass had witnessed, everything the asphalt remembered. The child appeared only when human hesitation or thoughtless curiosity risked tipping the balance. The overpass had preserved him, molded him from memory and expectation so that no act of carelessness would go unrecorded. The ranger watched as the child turned slightly, as if sensing him. He did not beckon, he did not speak, he only existed. And in that existence, the ranger felt the weight of the lives that had been measured, judged, and, in some cases, claimed. By morning, the overpass returned to its appearance of normalcy. Vehicles moved without pause. The child vanished, yet the asphalt remained alive with memory, patient, attentive, and eternal. The ranger walked away, understanding that no one could truly change the overpass, no one could record it fully, and no one could escape its quiet judgment. The child was not cruel. He was not merciful. He simply existed to preserve the consequence of hesitation, to manifest the expectation that the living had disrupted for decades. People still drive that highway. Some glimpse the figure on rare nights. Most never speak of it. But those who linger too long, who hesitate when instinct warns them, who look away for just a moment, are measured. Some disappear. Others are left with the memory, unshakable, a lingering dread that follows them long after the asphalt has faded from view. And the child waits, always. He is small, pale, and silent. He is motionless, patient, and deliberate. He is memory made flesh. No one can approach. No one can interfere. The highway remains, the overpass remains, and the child remains, waiting to remind all who cross that even a single hesitation can carry weight far greater than you imagine. And if you ever find yourself driving alone at night, glimpsing a small figure on the guardrail, pause just long enough to notice, but do not linger. Do not step out. Do not approach. Because the child is not there to ask for help. He is there to measure. And sometimes that measure is final.